Alrighty, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Nate, and welcome back to another weather forecast discussion, this time for June 23rd, 2023. Now, we aren't streaming today, so for the people who are over in Wyoming as well as South Dakota and Nebraska, you guys are going to have to watch out, as you can see on your screen, with our Day 1 convective outlook. Otherwise, we are going to be talking about the threat for severe weather that can continue all the way up into the beginning of next week, as well as a tropical update on Tropical Storm Bret and newly named Cindy in portions of the Atlantic. But before we get started, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button down below and subscribe if you are new. But once again, we are kicking off with the Day 1 convective outlook here for today. This is once again a big severe weather risk here for portions of the northern plains. We're talking about areas in extreme southeastern Montana, eastern Wyoming, as well as central to western South Dakota and central to western Nebraska. So if you are in those areas in the orange, that is a 3 out of 5 in the severe weather scale. If you are in the yellow, that is a 2 out of 5. And if you are in the green, or at least the dark green, that is a 1 out of 5. So something to watch out for from areas in the northern plains and all the way down into the south central portions of the United States, where there is the potential for some large hail and damaging winds. But if there's going to be tornadoes, it's going to be the northern side, and hopefully you guys stay safe from that. Also want to draw attention to the areas over here in the mid-Atlantic heading in towards the Chesapeake Bay region. There is a 1 out of 5 in the severe weather scale over there. I'm not sure if you guys saw that the first time, but there you go. That is the risk here for today. We'll move over to the tornado risk. You can see there's a 5% chance for the areas that I have mentioned. We also have the risk for strong damaging wind across the board in that red area. That is a 30% chance of seeing 58 mile per hour winds or larger within a 25-mile radius. And of course, we have those hatched risks here in these little mesh areas. And this is for hurricane force winds or greater within a 25-mile radius. And then last but not least, we also have the hail risk. We have the general hail risk here, and then we also have the SIG hail risk for areas in the mesh. So if you're in the mesh, you could potentially expect 2-inch sized hail or larger within your area. So something to kind of watch out for as we move on through into tonight. Moving on to tomorrow, we have a 2 out of 5 in the severe weather scale over here in portions of the Midwest. Watch out for this here. Could potentially even be upgraded to a 3 out of 5 on the severe weather scale, but this is mainly localized for portions of southern Minnesota, much of Iowa, into northern portions of Missouri, and western portions of Illinois. We can move over to the hail risk. You can see there is a significant threat for hail over there as well, so something to keep in mind with that. Damaging winds, not as much of a threat, but the tornado risk is relatively localized due to a surface low developing within that area, and we'll get in depth with a little bit more of that. But this is mainly more of an Iowa risk, in my honest opinion. And if you live over into portions of Iowa, maybe even extreme northern Missouri, you guys are going to have to watch out for some more severe weather. We can move off into the Sunday risk here. This is a massive 2 out of 5 on the severe weather scale as well. Could be potentially upgraded to a 3 out of 5 on the severe weather scale. Interesting thing about it before we get in depth with this, there's the potential that I could be chasing here on Sunday. So if I am going to stream, it is not going to be because of the radar analysis. I hope you guys understand that I got to get out of this chair eventually, and I got to, experience things for myself, try to get a different perspective as to what could potentially be happening out in the field. Hopefully this will be able to do so. If you guys are going to pay attention to this weather event, you can either A, find another weather YouTuber that's going to be on, or pay attention to the National Weather Service throughout the day. If you get a warning, please be sure to heed it accordingly. But we do have a 2 out of 5 in the severe weather scale here for portions of the Ohio River Valley heading back over into the Ozarks. If there was going to be some significant severe weather, in my opinion, this would be more localized towards the areas over here in Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, and maybe even central Tennessee. And I think the outlook for tomorrow will reflect that as well. The new one that'll come overnight into tomorrow will be able to show that accordingly. So something to kind of watch out for with that. We also have the threat for significant severe weather within this area as well. We could be talking strong damaging winds, maybe large hail. But this is definitely something that we're going to have to watch out for as we go into Sunday. And then, of course, we also have severe weather on Monday as well. We have the threat for severe weather, which means if I'm going to be streaming on one day for chasing, there's a good chance that I'm also going to be chasing in my local area too, and this is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to chase regardless of the fact here on Monday, so watch out for the people over here in the mid-Atlantic heading down into the northern portions of the southeast. We're talking the Carolinas all the way over into the DC metro area. So kind of watch out, Chesapeake Bay, general vicinity. It'll be kind of really interesting to see how that all progresses. So we'll take a look at the simulator radar here to kind of show you guys what all is happening. Of course, the time is in the top left-hand corner in Eastern. So if you are in Mountain or if you are in Central, you guys are going to have to adjust it accordingly. But you can see that these storms begin to start forming over here in portions of Wyoming. They become pretty widespread at that. And this is going to be your tornado risk. There's already been a few tornado warnings, including a couple of tornadoes. Meanwhile, sometime around 6 to 7 o'clock, we also have storms that start to form here from western portions of Kansas and eastern portions of Colorado, all the way down towards Mexico, extending through Texas. So this is going to be something that you guys are going to also want to watch out here for large hail. And then as this progresses from a large hail threat and moves through into the evening, it will transition into a strong damaging wind threat. We're talking hurricane force winds are possible within a lot of these areas, and you can see these little bow echoes. These are where you can find a lot of your strong damaging winds within these storms. So definitely something interesting to note with these storms as this moves off from the late evening into the overnight hours. And even as we pass midnight, you can see we still have a lot of these storms surge on through. They extend all the way over into portions of the Midwest. We're talking Saturday morning here where storms can start to move on through before finally we have a low pressure system that starts to kind of develop right here in the general vicinity of the northern plains into the northern Midwest, the upper Midwest. And we're also going to get a bit of a surface low. I'll show you guys with the dew points here in a second. That is going to end up trying to develop over here into portions of Iowa. And so severe weather is definitely going to be possible here across some of these areas of the Midwest. This will continue to extend all the way through, once again, into the portions of the Ohio River Valley, where we will transition to Sunday, where we also have the threat for severe weather here from portions of northern Illinois all the way down into Indiana through Sunday morning. So definitely something to watch out for there. Maybe some strong damaging winds before we finally start to kickstart stuff here in the early to late afternoon here on Sunday, with severe weather ranging from Michigan all the way down, potentially even to portions of Tennessee. You can see some of these other thunderstorms that are localized in the central portions of Tennessee. This will also continue to pose a threat for severe weather. Now, I think this model is doing a terrible job of showing what the actual area of severe weather is going to be at, but unfortunately, this is really the only model for us to kind of show you guys as to what's going on. So just realize that just because there are storms that are not hitting you doesn't mean that it won't. All right, I'm anticipating areas here of Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee, as well as extreme western Ohio to be the area to watch. That is what I am thinking, and that is kind of my general area as to where I would chase. So if you live in those areas, please be mindful. Those are the areas that I'm watching out for significant severe weather. And then finally, you can see as we transition from one event to another, you can see on Monday morning, storms start to extend over into the mid-Atlantic. And then you can start to see they become pretty widespread here at that. We got these little popcorn cells that start to form. And then we also have this massive band over here extending from Virginia all the way down to the Carolinas. So though this is a low resolution model, you can still tell that there is some severe weather activity placed over here into the mid-Atlantic. So definitely something, once again, that we are going to have to watch out for. We'll show you guys the parameters here. This is the 500 millibar wind shear. We do have a nice little dip in the jet stream that is currently centralized over the southwestern portions of the United States. This is expected to eject through portions of the northern plains here from tonight into tomorrow, and then we'll start talking about how it ejects through the Midwest here as we go from Saturday into Sunday. You can see there is some decently strong wind shear here aloft. It just doesn't exactly go over the areas that are anticipating some severe weather. We could also be talking about how this low pressure system is moving down to the southeast. Could cause a big wind risk once again as this shifts off into the Ohio River Valley and potentially even into the mid-Atlantic. So something to watch out for, but the wind shear does intensify as we go from Saturday into Sunday. And as this moves on through into Sunday night, you can see this becomes quite the low pressure system situated over the Great Lakes, where we do have a lot stronger wind shear that is starting to align with some of the thunderstorms that are going to be over the portions of the Ohio River Valley. So something to watch out for. And then if you guys can just assume that this continues its trajectory, this will continue to move on through into the mid-Atlantic as well. So definitely something to note with that. Moving on into the lower level jet here, extending from once again tonight all the way through into Sunday night. Low level jet is always going to be cranking once it starts to head into the overnight hours. So if you can find areas that happen before that, areas that are in the afternoon, that can give you guys a decent idea as to whether or not our low level jet will actually be good enough for maybe some tornadic activity. And so once again, low level jet activity overnight, no issue with that whatsoever. We'll head into the Saturday afternoon to the Saturday evening hours. You can see that there is definitely a low level jet in place over here into portions of Iowa and Minnesota. So no issues there. If there are storms that can actually try to fire off, they will be supported by some very strong wind shear, both aloft and towards the surface. And then as this shifts off over into portions of the Sunday event, we're talking about the Ohio River Valley event. You can see there is some wind shear that is in place here. Our low-level jet, though, is a little bit weaker in some spots. It is in place, which should be good enough for some localized severe weather over here as well. Now, this is going to be pretty easy for everyone, all right? This is going to be pretty easy to understand. Moisture is everywhere, all right? So there's going to be enough moisture in place. Where the moisture is situated is where we're going to want to watch out for. So watch this here. Specifically on Saturday afternoon, I want you guys to kind of pay attention a little bit to see there's a little bit extra moisture over here situated in the portions of Iowa. And you'll see that here. You guys see this little drop off that is 60-degree dew points right here, and then you have the 70-degree dew points. This drop off right here is a warm front, and this right here is your cold front. And so when the two kind of combine and you start to get a kind of channeled area to watch, this is going to be where your main tornado risk will exist. So within these high values of dew points, and of course where the winds start to change, which will be also in this main area here as well, we could be talking about some tornadic activity. So definitely something to watch out for tomorrow for some severe weather. And then of course we'll move on through into Sunday's event, where you can see there's an abundance of moisture. Oh my goodness. It's a lot. It's that time of year where there's going to be a lot of moisture. Also could be a localized severe weather threat over here into portions of the Central Plains into the Ozarks as well. That might be something interesting, especially with a surface low pressure system that is going to be situated over into portions of Texas. So something to watch out for over there as well. And last but not least, you got to have energy, at least in this instance. I'm not going to go any further in depth than that because we got a bunch of stuff to talk about here. The video is already getting a little too long for my liking, but you can see that we do have an abundance of energy here this evening. We're talking about 3,000 to almost 4,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE in some of the main areas for the tornado risk. And you can keep going further down south, and you can see the scale on the bottom right there tells you all you need to know. Even the maximum of the bottom right-hand side. Some areas could have an upwards of 5,000 joules per kilogram, which is just bonkers in itself. So we do have enough energy with that. We'll move on through into Saturday's risk. You can see we have a lot of these reds and these yellows indicating we do have enough energy for that as well. About 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE in that tornadic environment that is possible. And then we can move on through into Sunday's risk, and we can see, oh my gosh. You guys see what I mean, and how it's just that time of year where we have so much energy, we just have so much moisture. All you need is wind shear, and you'll get tornadic events. And unfortunately, this just seems to be one of those instances where we're getting that spike of wind shear that is moving on through the area. All right, so now we come to the stream to where we talk about the tropical update. Now, we have two systems that I've mentioned. We have Bret over here that just passed the Lesser Antilles, and we also have Cindy that's on the approach to one. And we'll get to Bret first. We'll show you here on the satellite imagery that there's not really a whole lot of thunderstorms. Maybe there's some new initiation over there on that eastern side, but you can see the center of circulation is pretty exposed, and where the thunderstorm has initiated is actually where the mid-level cyclone is. It's not vertically aligned at all. It's actually very sheared out. We have a lot of wind shear that is pushing these clouds off to the north and east. You can actually even see that here with some of these other clouds over here on the side. So Bret is getting sheared. This thing is not expected to sustain anymore, but we'll show you here the forecast cone just to show you guys that this is going to continue on its western trajectory. We have a lot of strong trade winds that are moving across the area that is steering this system further and further west. This will continue to maintain as a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm at the moment, and will then eventually start to weaken further and further on its approach to Central America. So just something to note, by the time we get towards 8 a.m. on Sunday, we could be talking about this thing now becoming a tropical depression. And just to kind of reinforce the narrative that we do have some strong trade winds, we have two high pressure systems that are over here in the portions of the Atlantic, and with both of which having clockwise flow just like this. This flow, at least on the southern side, can be kind of amplified here, as well as the fact that the trade winds are a bit closer to the equator. So we have a lot of these winds that are surging from Africa, moving over into northern South America, and then over into the Caribbean. A lot of these storms are going to be kind of just surging a bit further to the west. But I can kind of show you guys here the reason why Bret is not going to sustain all too long. There's Bret, there's Puerto Rico, and of course there is Hispaniola over in these areas. And we have a lot of wind shear. We have this upper level trough that is kind of digging through here. It's creating a lot of wind shear over this area. And I mean, oh my goodness, you can see everything out in front of it. If this thing is moving west, this thing's going to continue to be sheared more and more and more. And when thunderstorms start to get further and further away from the center of low pressure, this thing is not allowed to sustain any further. And so therefore, this thing kind of really just dies out. So that's kind of the good news there with Bret. Now, Cindy, however, looks a little bit different from how Bret looks. You can take a look at the live satellite imagery, and you can see that it's got a lot of thunderstorms under what seems to be a center of low pressure that is situated somewhere over here. And you can see a lot of the thunderstorms are kind of wrapping around it as well. You can see a lot of these thunderstorms are also giving off a bit of this kind of ventilation. You can see these little feathery cirrus that comes off of the storm just like this, and they're moving in a clockwise formation, which is healthy for a tropical storm. You can also see that I've mentioned we have an upper level trough, which means we'd have some strong wind shear aloft. That is not currently present over Cindy, which means Cindy does have a bit of time for itself to try and strengthen and even maintain a little bit further. So that'll be something interesting to note with Cindy, and we can see that here. Of course, if the National Hurricane Center showed specifically what its intensity was, then we would be talking a little bit more in depth here with the actual graphic. But as of right now, it is a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm. It's expected to get to around 60 miles per hour on its approach to the Lesser Antilles. But as it continues to move further and further towards the north and west here, we mentioned a lot of that wind shear that is currently situated over portions of the Lesser Antilles will start to interact with more of the system, or it will move into that wind shear with that system. And I want to mention that these high pressure systems here, sure, they're aiding to the trade winds, forcing this thing more towards the west, but winds are starting to kind of move toward the north and west once you get around the southwestern portions of the high pressure. And so the trade wind is going to actually pull this thing along a little bit further. And then, of course, I also want to mention here that the wind shear is also going to want to pull it over as well. It's going to try and root a little bit more into the atmosphere, and this wind shear is going to try and kind of push it a little bit to the north and east. So when you have conflicting flow of winds moving east and winds moving west, they kind of cancel out, and the common denominator is winds that move to the north will prevail. And so this will end up kind of shifting a little bit more towards the north as well. Of course, the western flow is going to be aided a little bit more, so the storm is going to continue to progress further and further towards the north and west. However, areas over here in the northern portions of the Lesser Antilles are still going to want to watch out for the potential of maybe this tropical cyclone trying to get a little bit closer than maybe to comfort. As you can see here with the simulated radar, this is actually going to take it relatively close to the general area here. Might get some showers and thunderstorms, but if this gets pushed off a little bit more towards that area, we could be talking about some localized flooding that is possible. But according to the Euro model, it's expected to kind of stall a little bit before we have another low pressure system that kind of anchors with a cold front here, and the jet stream is actually kind of take this one up, and eventually move it up over here into portions of extreme eastern Canada. We're talking Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. So this is where things start to get a little bit wonky with the models. We have had the Euro, which takes this a little bit further up into that area here sometime towards the end of next week, and eventually even towards the turn of the month into the beginning of July. But we also have the American model, the GFS, which actually takes this up there a lot sooner. You can see this thing even intensifies on its approach to Bermuda, which is something that we're going to want to watch out for the end of next week before it starts to really move off and end up becoming a bit more significant on its approach to Nova Scotia. So for you guys over there, you guys are definitely going to want to watch out for the potential of the remnants of Cindy that could actually head off over into your general vicinity. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, turn on notifications, share this with friends and family and on social media. Also follow me on social media, link will be in the description down below. I will not be live streaming tomorrow. Morgan might, depending upon if Morgan is going to come with me to chase. That is if I chase, so we shall see. But definitely still something to where you guys are going to want to stay safe, pay attention to your local National Weather Service, and if a warning gets issued for your area, please be sure to heed it. Stay safe, everyone, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace out.